It's time for the Hockey Writers Grind Line, a weekly show covering everything Detroit Red Wings. Brought to you by our own iconic top line of Wings writers. Sit back and enjoy the grind.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Grind Line here at the Hockey Writers. I'm your host, Matthew Zator. As you can see, we've got a huge panel of people that have been on the show before, guests, regular panelists, all that stuff. We got everyone here. We got basically this is like a crossover between Prospect Corner and Grind Line. So just from the top of what I can see here, we got Logan Horn, Peter Baracchini, Delaney Rimer, Devin Little, and Tony Wolak, part of our panel here. You've seen them all on videos. So if you're the first time watching this show, welcome. And this is not our usual crazy panel. We usually have only like 3 people, sometimes 4. But yeah, this is going to be a fun episode. We're going to, well, like I said, Prospect Corner crossover. So we're going to talk prospects. And of course, the draft is just around the corner. We're only a few days away from the 2023 draft. So we're also going to be talking about the draft, obviously. So let's just get right into this fun time here and talk. Let's start with our one good, one bad, but it's going to have a little bit of a twist. And it's going to be prospect pool edition. It's going to be a good and a bad from the prospect pool. And we'll start with you, Logan. A good and a bad from the Detroit Red Wings prospect pool at this point, just before the draft here.
Okay, so this feels like this is like a layup here. My good, I'm going to go with the left side of defense, just because as long as Simon Edvinsson is just like a good top 4 left side defenseman in the next year or 2, which I expect he will be, then they really just need 1 or 2 guys to hit, and they've got a lot. They've got a ton of options. I wouldn't be too worried about like trying to trade them away now or something, because you have no idea how many of them are actually going to make the NHL. But tons of depth there, probably the most depth in any one position in the entire prospect pool. That's an easy pick there. And then one bad is the other side of defense, where you've got Mo Seider and crickets. I mean, Antti Tuomisto was signed again, coming back from Finland. Could be an interesting player. I doubt he gets regular NHL games this year, but could be. Looks like someone that they're hoping could get there after some time in the AHL soon. But that is having Antti Tuomisto as your top right D prospect is a pretty serious indictment of a lack of depth there. So I feel like that's a safe bet as my one bad.
Yeah, I pretty much, I'm just going to agree with you, Logan. I think that's basically the one I was going to say. Their left side is just there's so much there. And I don't think they need to add anything at this draft. I mean, they could, but the right side is probably where they're going to focus. Mo Seider's the best right-hand defenseman on the team in the prospect. Well, not in the prospect pool anymore. It's not a prospect anymore, really. And then, yeah, there's not much after that. I think they'll probably add the draft. So that's a good and bad for me. So I don't really have to really expand on that, Logan. You pretty much got it. The good and the bad is pretty much the defense is, I mean, they've got so much forward depth and prospects. There's just so many different types of players they got skill, they got the bottom 6 type players as well. So I mean, I think the forward depth is not a bad at all. That's probably a good as well, so I'll add that in there just to make it a little different. It's just their forward depth. I think they just got a lot coming and a lot of interesting prospects there for sure. Right, let's move on to one of their top prospects in Marco Kasper. He just made his NHL debut, played 1 game, and then got injured, unfortunately. And but he'll be into probably playing this season, hopefully. So let's get on that. Start with you, Delaney, on this one. Do you think he will start the season in the NHL? I mean, like I said, he has 1 game. He'll have a good chance of making the lineup. Do you think he does?
Well, I do think that he stands a good chance of making the roster at the start of the season, especially considering that we don't know what the Red Wings are going to do with some contracts during the off season here. It looks like we've got Hugh Suter and Joe Veleno with their contracts coming to an end at the end of the 2022-23 season. So if they keep both of them around, cool. Maybe it'll be a while until we see Kasper, but I could see him coming in with the injuries and potential contract moving situations. And he looked like a true NHL player in his debut. So I think he stands a fair chance.
It was really impressive in that really small sample size, one game, but
yeah,
it's going to be fun to see what he can do this season if he does start. Peter, over to you. What do you think about Marco Kasper? I mean, like I said, he made his NHL debut. Do you think he has a good chance of starting the season with the Red Wings?
Yeah, like you said, it was a small sample, and it was against the Maple Leafs when he made his debut. And unfortunately, his start to his NHL career didn't get off on the right foot, obviously with the injury, but there was some promise in what led up or before the injury. He showed that tenacious side, getting in on the forecheck, the speed, the work ethic that he displayed all throughout, or what made the Detroit Red Wings want him in the first place. I think it all depends on, I think they want to get more of a look with him. So that 9-game, tryout is going to be very, very crucial for him. It would have been, they would have had a little bit more of a sample aside from just 15 minutes or so, or one game towards the end of the season. But now if they get more of a sense of where he is right now, obviously we know he could play against, players older than him. He could handle the workload and everything like that. If he shows that consistency in the first 9 games, then I think that he is going to be in a good spot and stick with the team. They feel like he could use some retooling, obviously some time in the AHL. If he's able to go down, that would be huge. But considering that they signed him, they gave him that opportunity, didn't end well. I think knowing his work ethic and his mentality, I think he'll manage to crack the roster and be there consistently throughout the year.
Yeah, I think so too. And the thing is, he was was he playing with a broken kneecap, right? Which is insane to me. But and he still looked really good. So I don't know. It's been fun to see what he can do when he's fully healthy, for sure. Okay, let's move on and start and talk about the goaltending. Their top goaltending prospect, and Sebastian Cossa. And Tony, we'll start with you. What are your expectations for Cossa this season? I mean, he had a good season in the ECHL, played a few games in the AHL, but mostly down in the ECHL with the Toledo Walleye. What do you expect from him coming into the 2023-24 season?
Yeah, I appreciate you handing me this question as the resident goalie here. But I was impressed with how he handled himself this year in his first year pro. Statistically, you saw Cossa put up a similar save percentage in the WHL last season as the ECHL this season, which if you're taking a step up, that's always great to see. But on a more broader perspective, he was put in a new, more challenging environment this year, and he performed well and had a great attitude. I'm sure he would have loved to play in the AHL this year. And he, like you mentioned, he got a small taste of action there too. But he had his assignment and he took it to heart, and he exceeded expectations in my opinion. And plus the couple of games in the AHL is a good motivator for next year too. My expectations for him are to, split duties in the AHL. Ideally with a veteran goalie. I would love to see Alex Nedeljkovic come back and play for Grand Rapids and have that be a 1A, 1B combo there. But he, needs some time to learn the ropes of a stronger league. And, hopefully he has another great season and at a step up from where he was this past year, and just take it, game by game, year by year.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I mean, goaltenders develop at a different rate than all the other positions too. So it's great for really good first step in his career. So Delaney, over to you on Cossa. I mean, you watched him a lot with the Toledo Walleye. What do you think? What are your expectations for him coming into this next season?
I'm very happy with how he did this season in Toledo and in the AHL, that is, because goalies develop so much differently than skaters do. So it's kind of hard to tell how they're going to adjust to playing at a pro level. And he took it in stride. He had a couple bumpy games here and there, obviously, as a rookie's goaltender is going to have. But in the regular season, and with a .913 save percentage and 2.56 goals against average, like Tony said, similar numbers to his in the WHL. And he had a winning record regular season and in playoffs. He was part of an awesome goaltending tandem with now fellow Red Wing prospect John Lethman. Two awesome guys. But next season, I would like to see his confidence improve more at the AHL level and see him get more time up there. Now that Bratstrom is going back to playing in Sweden, if I remember correctly, that'll open up a new door for him to get into Grand Rapids, because Bratstrom was there for a good portion of the season. So maybe Cossa will have better chances to see some ice time there, but seeing him improve at the AHL level this year in particular would be something that I would be expecting to see from him.
Yeah, it'd be great for him to get a lot more games in the AHL. We'll see what happens with him. I think he has a good chance of doing that, but like I said, it's no point in rushing him. You don't want to, because the Red Wings do have a good with Husso and in the NHL. So I don't think you need to rush him into the AHL or even playing in the NHL. So it's going to be interesting to see what he can do next season for sure. But it was a good first step when everyone was kind of worried about him. I think at the beginning. After they drafted him ahead of Wallstead, right? So, all right, we talked about top forward prospect wise, top goaltender. Let's talk about the top defenseman. Simon Edvinsson played 9 games with the Red Wings after the trade deadline. Looked really good. So, Devin, what are you looking out of him in his draft +3 season? He's played in the NHL now. Looks really good. What do you think is coming for him?
Well, I think the key thing there is draft +3. It's I don't think anybody expected him to be a NHL player immediately after he was drafted, and then even this past season there was some hope that he'd be with the Red Wings, especially with how he looked in training camp. But ultimately, it was for the best that he spent the time in Grand Rapids, and now this is where he has to live up to his draft slot. Or at least start to live up to it, right? I think this is where this is the year where you expect him to be a full-time NHLer. It's going to be a lot of competition for him, not just from the Red Wings prospects. As Logan mentioned, there's a ton of left-handed prospects for him to contend with. But we kind of all expect that Yzerman's going to bring in at least one defenseman in the offseason, whether it's through trade or free agents or whatever. So he's going to have to earn a spot. But like you said, Matt, he did look good in those 9 games. He's got all the pedigree and all the talent in the world to, claim a spot and be a big time player for Detroit. That's what they drafted him to be. So, not to set the bar too high for him or anything, but when you're drafted 6th overall, you kind of want to see him, live up to the draft slot. And that's this coming season. That's when he has to start doing it.
Yeah, and you're supposed to build on those 9 games, and those 9 games really,
absolutely,
were really good. So we'll see what happens. Tony, over to you. What do you think about Edvinsson? What are you looking for him about in coming into this coming season?
So at first, when I was kind of doing my off-season analysis, I wasn't sure what to expect with his health. Edvinsson had off-season shoulder surgery, and the timeline kind of put it at kind of a fuzzy area of like maybe ready for camp, may not be ready for camp, might need some time to get reacclimated, but Steve Yzerman said during his pre-draft media availability that Edvinsson will in fact be ready for camp. So that's good news. He'll have the same runway as everyone else. And so with that in mind, and based on the 9 games he played last year, I fully expect that he should be able to become an effective second pairing defenseman next year for the Red Wings. Now they might start him off in a more of a sheltered role to kind of get used to the daily NHL grind. But I think by the end of the season, as long as he's not wearing down from the elongated schedule, he's going to be a good second pairing defenseman for the Red Wings. And I think, again, may not start here at first, but throughout the season, he'll get some time on the second power play unit and eventually become the quarterback of the second power play unit for the Red Wings. So I guess I do have kind of high expectations for him, but like Devin said, if you're the number 6 pick and it's your draft +3 year, you're kind of expecting him to come into camp and show he belongs and really move forward on that challenge. And that's what I'm expecting to see this year.
Yeah, I mean, Edvinsson is, well, their top. I'd say definitely their top defensive prospect, and we'll see who could name him their top prospect. We'll see. We'll get that. We'll get there. But yeah, Edvinsson, like I said, he was really impressive in those 9 games, and I'm expecting a lot from him too coming into this next season, and see what he can do in a hopefully full season without injuries or whatever, right? So yeah, looking forward to it. Okay, well, we've talked about our top 3 from each position there. Let's talk about the best of the rest and highlight another Detroit Red Wings prospect. And Peter, we'll start with you. Who do you want to highlight that's in this pool that deserves a mention?
Yeah, I'm going with the 3rd leading scorer in the OHL, and that's Amadeus Lombardi. Really, really happy with his progression that he had this season, and he was just on another level. I mean, the speed, the hands, the skill, everything was just combined into just one dangerous offensive season. And that's a major jump from the 59 that he had the previous year. Didn't play the year before because of the COVID locked out season. But it seemed like, he managed to find a step, managed to find another gear and get, up to the level where, that missed season really didn't hamper him or have an impact. He was drafted in the 4th round in 2022. He could be one of those sneaky good prospects that, flies under the radar with the production that he's having right now. But, obviously you still want to see a little bit more consistency of what he could do at the next level. He already dominated the O. Now the next step is the AHL. Can he provide that level of consistency? He has the skill set. He has the smarts. He has the IQ. It's just a matter of just putting it together. But I've really been impressed with him all season.
Yeah, and what a name. I always say that. I love his name.
Incredible.
Great. All right, Devin, over to you. Highlight another prospect that everyone should be kind of keeping an eye on going forward.
Well, we talk about Edvinsson maybe making the team. We talk about Kasper maybe making the team. Now, let me talk about Carter Mazur maybe making the team next season, because I think he's going to have a real good shot at it. He had his sophomore season just this past season with the University of Denver, wore an A on his jersey. If you know anything about me and prospects, I love it when prospects wear letters on their jerseys. And he put up 22 goals, improved on his total from last season. Just kind of naturally progressed this season. And it led to him signing his entry-level contract with Detroit. Didn't get any games in Detroit, but he did get 6 games in with the Griffins. And what do you know? He put up a point per game pace, 6 points, 6 games, only a -1. So he wasn't really hurting the team. In fact, you could probably argue he was a nice little needed jolt for the Griffins towards the end of the season, especially when they didn't really have a whole lot to play for at that point. So for him to look like he belonged to that level, I think that's exciting for him and what his prospects are heading into next season. And then to top it all off, he looked pretty darn good at the World Championships with Team USA too. Pretty much just anywhere he played this season, he looked good, made an impact. Plays, I've talked for like 2 years at this point. I've hyped him up as Tyler Bertuzzi's successor. Well, Bertuzzi's not a Red Wing anymore. Carter Mazur very well might be next season. So I think he's going to add a lot of snarl and grit to the Red Wings lineup when he does come. I don't know if he's going to start the season in Detroit, but I would not be surprised one bit if he's wearing a winged wheel at some point next season.
Yeah, I agree. I like Mazur. I think he was, like I said, looked really good. Like you said, looked really good in the AHL, and with a full season in the AHL potentially, we'll see what happens. But yeah, very exciting prospect for sure. All right, let's round it out with the host of Prospect Corner, Logan. Logan, what do you think? Best of the rest that you want to highlight here?
I'll talk about Dmitri Buchelnikov, everyone's favorite absolute under the radar surprise at the 2022 draft. Don't pretend you knew his name before he was selected in the 2nd round. Nobody knew who he was unless you were like real deep in the industry. But Buchelnikov had an insane year. He played in the VHL, which is like the 2nd tier pro league in Russia. He was too good for juniors because in his draft year, which was technically his draft +1 because he didn't get drafted in 2021, he just dominated the MHL. So he went up to the KHL for the start of this year. Didn't get a ton of minutes because he's on SKA St. Petersburg, one of the best teams. it's tough to give like a 19-year-old real minutes, especially when they're 5'9", which is kind of an issue for Buchelnikov. But so he played 10 games. I think he had a couple points, which is nice. He didn't have a lot of minutes, so getting a couple points is positive. Went down to the VHL and scored 28 points in 35 games. One of the leaders on the team from the moment he joined it until the end. Offensively, he's got a great shot, tons and tons and tons of skill. He's going to be in Russia for another 2 seasons at least. He's signed an extension there, but I expect him to play maybe low minutes, but consistently in the KHL next year. And the year after, he could be a top sixer in the KHL. I would not be shocked if he's kind of a, one-way offensive winger who puts up a lot of points in the KHL, comes over to North America, and who knows, maybe he makes the team at a training camp, but he's 5'9", which makes it a little bit of a tough player to project into an NHL lineup at this point. But I hope he gets a shot. He's a ton of fun to watch and would be really fun to have on the Red Wings personally, I think. So Dmitri Buchelnikov is my pick.
Yes, he's an exciting one to kind of see what happens with him because, like you said, no one really knew who he was when they drafted him. I didn't. I'll admit that as well. So, I mean, I looked into him afterwards, but yeah, he's definitely known now. So there you go. Okay, well, we've talked about a bunch of prospects. Let's get to the top 3, and we'll go through quickly through everyone here. And this is pretty much like our off the rush. So we'll start with you, Delaney, because, well, I mean, I could probably tell you because you had an article to talk, but refresh our mind. Who are the top 3 prospects on the Red Wings in your mind?
Oh boy. Okay. Let's see if my rating has changed in my head since I wrote that. So I still think Marco Kasper is my number 1. Because he's impressed me so much, not just with his game, but his charisma and personality off the ice as well, which is a huge aspect of prospect development. Number 2, Cossa, said it earlier, he's developing wonderfully. And then 3 is still going to be Edvinsson. Only reason he's not second is because I just want to see him have a full year injury free and really make him worth that 6th overall pick spot. Oh gosh. Splot.
Yeah, there you go. Well, we talked about all 3 at the beginning.
Yep, and there you go. Surprise.
Different order, but we'll see if it changes with everyone else. We'll go, Devin. What's your top 3?
I'll go from the bottom. Number 3, Carter Mazur. Number 2, Marco Kasper. Number 1, Simon Edvinsson.
All right, Tony, top 3.
I'm a little bummed you didn't mention Sebastian Cossa there, Devin, but I understand.
Ouch.
Delaney goes 1 to 3. Devin goes 3 to 1. All right.
Start with 2. You got to start with 2.
Gotta start with 2.
Number 2, Marco Kasper. Number 1, Simon Edvinsson, and number 3, Sebastian Cossa. Of the 3, I think Edvinsson has the highest ceiling. I do think he'll be a top pairing defenseman, soon enough. I would put Kasper as the second best prospect just because I see him more as a second line center throughout his career than a top line center. And then Cossa as 3 is, I would hope his trajectory continues to go in the right direction. But everything I've seen so far suggests that's going to be the case. But I would rank a center higher than a goalie in terms of, prospect development and what the future might hold.
For sure. All right, Peter, top 3.
Am I changing the order too? Am I going to do 3, 1, 2 or
just do whatever you want to do.
I'll go in descending order to 3 to 1. 3, Carter Mazur for all the reasons Devin said. Really strong world championship. 1 and 2 is going to be a coin flip. It could be either way between Kasper and Edvinsson, but I'm going Kasper number 2, Edvinsson 3 because of just seniority. He's already had experience in the AHL. He has another year to develop. Seems a little bit closer, but Kasper is a close second right there. So either way, 1A, 1B, Kasper, Edvinsson, Edvinsson, Kasper, you name it.
It's a good, I mean, yeah, it's like a coin flip for them. Logan, finish it off. Top 3 Red Wings prospects.
For 3, I'd put Cossa, 2, Edvinsson, and Kasper number 1. I just feel like if you're a second line center in the SHL at 18 years old, I feel like that's kind of your like low end projection in the NHL when you're in your 20s. At least his style of game. Not everyone, but
yeah. So mine, I'll go 3 to 1 as well. I'm going Mazur 3. 2 is going to be Kasper, 1 Edvinsson, because I agree with the Edvinsson being, I mean, he's going to be a top line or top pairing defenseman for a long time, and you don't get that very often. So, I mean, yeah, Edvinsson and Kasper, I mean, like I say, they're pretty close, but I'm going to go with Edvinsson going 1 there for me. Okay, well, we're going pretty well. We've got half the show gone here, and we talked about prospect pool. Before we move on to draft talk now, which is really exciting, here's a message from the Hockey Writers.
Interested in writing for the Hockey Writers? If you have experience writing about hockey, are passionate about the sport, and are looking to take your writing to the next level, the Hockey Writers could be the place for you. Here at THW, you will have the opportunity to hone your craft at one of the world's largest and most respected hockey publishers. You will have control over what you write, be able to seek out media credentials, and be supported by a large network of writers and editors. Plus, you'll get paid for doing it. If you're interested and want to know more about team openings and requirements, please visit the Write for THW page on the Hockey Writers website. A link to that page is also listed in the description.
All right, we're back, and let's talk draft. And we've been talking draft, of course, throughout the last month and a half or so. But it's going to be fun to kind of get some more perspectives on the draft coming up. So let's start with the strategy. The Red Wings draft strategy this coming draft. We'll start with you, Logan. What should that be going in? I mean, Yzerman has gotten pretty good prospects in the draft since he started being the GM. What do you think? What do you think of this draft strategy will be for him?
Well, my very high level understanding of what the strategy has been over the last couple of years is find players who have as many of the following: great skating, high compete level, and size. At least with early picks, that's kind of been the MO for Detroit. So what I say is stick to the plan. I don't know, don't get impatient and take guys that can be in your lineup sooner but have lower upside. Obviously, the fans are starting to get antsier and antsier every year, and we want to see them compete for the playoffs or maybe get in. So it could be tempting to maybe take someone that is a little easier to project into the NHL sooner. But I say just keep going with what's been working. Honestly, the team's starting to turn around, but you just got to take the absolute best player, especially at 9 and 17 in the first round. Especially with those picks, you don't draft for position. You need help everywhere. Even I understand people being worried about taking a lefty early, but was it 2 years ago that the right side of the D looked really good, and now there's one player there? So who knows where the left side of the D is in a couple of years? Maybe very few of these prospects turn out, or just stuff happens. You never know. You don't draft for right now. You're drafting a couple of years into the future. So just take the absolute best players possible, and preferably there's a center and a right-handed defenseman somewhere in the first 2 rounds, but I'm not going to be upset if there isn't, because they just got to take the best players.
Yeah, and there's many of them. There are many best players in this draft. All right, Tony, you've written a lot of articles about the draft so far, mock drafts, draft strategy. I believe you had one as well. What do you think the draft strategy should be for the Red Wings coming up?
So, I mean, I think you got to start with the Red Wings' current prospect pipeline and kind of look at where they could use more depth or they could use improvements. Logan mentioned earlier that the right side of the blue line is looking a little weak. which I completely agree with. Also, while I agree that Marco Kasper is a great player, the Red Wings still need more like goal scoring elite forwards in their pipeline. And obviously, if they won the lottery in one of these years, that would have been resolved by now, but that's just not the case. So I would love to see the Red Wings address, the goal scoring / elite forwards and right D, in the draft. I agree that the play here is the best player available. And the Red Wings have many prospects, or I'm sorry, the 2023 draft class has many prospects who can fill these needs that the Red Wings have. But I will say that for the first round, I would very much prefer the Red Wings to grab 2 forwards. And that's because the 2024 draft class has a bunch of great defensemen in the top half based on early projections. In addition, the Red Wings are stacked on the left side of D for now, as Logan said. And on the right side, they have Cider, and Anton Johansson is pretty solid as well. We'll see if he turns into anything. But I would prefer that the Red Wings address the right D need in the second or later rounds after that. Also, from a strategy perspective, they do have those 3 second-round picks in a row. And I would love for them to trade one of those to add a roster player, given the weak free agent class that we're seeing this summer. Whether that's a goal scoring forward or a right defenseman. It's funny, the prospect pipeline and the actual roster had the same exact needs. I hope they're addressed in some way or another. But otherwise, as we get into the later rounds, I'm looking for the Red Wings to take swings on players with 1 or 2 elite traits, but otherwise need a ton of refinement. And again, if at all possible, look for players who are either currently or will be in leagues that have longer development runways. With the Canadian junior hockey leagues, you have only 2 years to see if a player turns into something that could be, part of your future. And for example, I like Pasquale Zito. I think he's a great prospect, but after, it's been 2 years since he's been drafted. The Red Wings didn't sign him. He goes back in the draft. Boom, done.
Yeah.
But if you draft someone of the USHL or NCAA or European leagues, you're looking at 3, 4, 5, even 6 years of development before you need to make a decision on signing them. So ideally in the later rounds, taking players out of those leagues.
Yeah, that's a good point. Because you don't need them right away. I mean, you can wait for a lot of these guys. So it's going to be interesting to see where they go. They have a lot of different ways they could go, because those 2 picks in the first round, you could go either way, right? And obviously not a goaltender, but defensive forwards for sure. Okay, well,
Matt, sorry to do this. Do you mind if I say something quick about
Sure.
that? I know we got a lot of people. I just want to say on the I have no problems with taking 2 forwards in the first round, like you said, Tony. I will say though that if you're not taking a defenseman because you're expecting good ones next year, which you're right, there's a ton of great prospects right now, you just can never guarantee that they're that good a year from now. Like, look at Cam Allen. We all thought he was going to be surefire first round, maybe one of the best defenders in the whole class. And he's probably not going in the second round even this year. He seemed like a slam dunk, like no doubt pick. Yeah. So you just never really know. So I'd be wary of changing your strategy this year for something that you can't actually predict, really.
It's fair.
Good point. Yeah. We'll see. We'll see what he does.
Who knows?
Like I said, there's quite a few options, and it seems like there's some more defensemen that are being talked about being drafted in the first round that we didn't think would be. So that's going to be fun to see what happens, not just for the Red Wings, for everyone else, for sure. Okay, well, let's talk about those first rounders and talk about them potentially trading one of them. Devin, do you think that'll happen? Do you think Yzerman will trade one of those first rounders, either to move up, whatever, to trade one of those guys?
We'll start real short here with pick 9. I think the only way they trade that pick is if they're trading up to maybe grab like a Michkov or something like that. I think otherwise I'm very much expecting them to pick at 9th overall. Now 17th overall is definitely a different story. Even like, I forget what word he used exactly, but Yzerman used a different word when he talked about his plans with 9 and 17. Like he was like, I'm planning on picking at 9 and then using pick 17. It's like, how are you going to use it then? So it's a case in point, right? Like it sounds like if a deal can be made, 17's the pick that's kind of on the table here. I think that Yzerman is being genuine when he says that he intends to make picks with both of these picks, because you're guaranteed to get 2 really, really good prospects. They're both top 20 picks. One of them's a top 10. However, we've seen a lot of names at the trade market, especially like just in the last week.
Yeah.
And one way or another, I think the Red Wings have to add an impact player with that 17th pick. You can do it by taking a player in the draft. You can also do it by dealing the pick for immediate help. It's got to be a young player, got to be a player that's going to be around for longer than 2 years. But I do think that there is very much some potential that 17th pick is not made by the Red Wings. I would be shocked if they traded back from either of them, like genuinely shocked. But I think that, just kind of close out my point here. 9, expect them to pick. 17, we'll see. I would not be surprised if we know what they're doing with 17 before the draft even starts, because maybe a deal was made.
Yes, I agree. I think that 17th pick is going to be the one in play. The 9th is going to be, I think they're picking with that for sure. Delaney, your thoughts on that? What do you think Yzerman will do? Do you think he'll trade one of those picks?
Yeah, I pretty much verbatim, word for word, agree with what Devin said. 9th overall, that's not going down or going away. That's either going up or nowhere. And you can't give up a top 10 pick in this year's draft class if you have it. I can't name anything that would make you want to fully give up that pick. Pick 17, on the other hand, that has a lot of leverage to it still, especially for teams that are looking to trade away players and work on building up their future. And one big name that's been floating around the last week, especially in connection to Detroit, Alex DeBrincat. If you want to give up that second first round pick, that could be part of what they're looking for. And we have roster players that we could trade with that pick to bring in a player like that. So, and that's an immediate reward because he'll already be playing. So I could see a trade like that happening, or if he somehow manages to trade it up, cool. But I don't think he's going to, I don't know why he would trade it down.
Yeah.
So.
I do. I agree. I think that, like I said, that 17th pick is going to be in play and there's quite a few players that seem to be getting it more available. The Flames just added 5 of them.
Yep.
Yeah.
Literally.
Who's even left on their team at the end of this?
Jonathan Huberdeau and Mackenzie Weegar, the guys who just signed 8-year contracts.
And they're like, oh, come on.
Where's everybody
So
going?
there's a few other guys being added to the trade block that, Tyler Toffoli could be an interesting one for the Red Wings too, right? So, okay. We've talked about strategy. We talked about trades. Let's talk about targets, which is what we're all here for. 9th overall. Let's start there. Peter, a target for the Red Wings at 9th overall, do you think should be on their list?
Yeah, I'm going to go with an easy one right now because I have 2 in mind. One is definitely the clone of Dylan Larkin, and that's Oliver Moore. Yes. Easy answer right there. I think he has the highest upside because he was able to anchor that second line and just, even though he was overshadowed by that top line of the U.S. national development team, he was the best player on that second line, and even at times probably looked better than the top line carrying the second line on his own. But I digress. Really like his upside. I think he would be a great target, and he fills out that center depth. The other one is Colby Barlow, and there's still a mixed review on Barlow at this point because he has developed quickly. Yes, you don't know what his upside is, but he's a left wing. The Red Wings, according to league prospects, look very thin aside from Carter Mazur, Dmitri Buchelnikov, but you don't know the certainty with him. Barlow knows how to put the puck in the net. He plays a power forward game. He can get on the attack, and he has a developing two-way game as well. So he's a leader, vocal presence on and off the ice, great player with and without the puck. So I think that upside probably should resonate a little bit with Yzerman, but obviously if I have to pick the two, it's going to be more. But you know, I still think highly of Barlow. I think he's a really great talent. And if they need a power forward element, kind of like what Tyler Bertuzzi had, you know, maybe not a little bit less bite, but the mentality is still there.
Yeah, I love those two guys. The Red Wings have so much options at 9th overall. We'll see who drops to them. Could potentially be some interesting names. Tony, a 9th overall target for the Red Wings.
Just to follow up on what Peter was saying, I'm a big fan of Colby Barlow as well. I would love if they took him with the 17th pick, but chances are he's not going to fall that far. I would be very happy if the Red Wings use one of their second round picks to trade up to, you know, pick him a little earlier than 17. Or Matt, we talked about this in a previous episode, doing a contract dump with Vancouver to swap first round pick 17 and 11 that Vancouver has. But for number 9, here's how I see it. So you have to imagine that Connor Bedard, Adam Fantilli, Will Smith, and Leo Carlson are the first 4 picks. And, well, they're going to be gone well before the Red Wings pick. So that leaves one of Matvei Michkov, Dalibor Dvorsky, Zach Benson, Ryan Leonard, and David Reinbacher as being available to the Red Wings. No matter who you get out of those 5, that's W right there. I'm guessing Michkov doesn't make it past the Capitals at number 8. So in that case, I'll go with Dalibor Dvorsky as my optimal pick for number 9. I've been beating this drum for a while, mostly because back in like January, I tweeted something like, with the 10th pick, the Red Wings select Dalibor Dvorsky. And then it's kind of like, yeah, this is making a lot more sense now. Like this might actually happen. So I'm going to keep going with this, but I do think he'd fit in well with the Red Wings and with their system and their culture as well. He's a 200-foot player, which is something that Yzerman has coveted with his early picks. He's a complete player as well. He's a goal scorer. He can be a playmaker. He can be a driver on his line. He can be a finisher on his line. He's been trusted in defensive or offensive situations, regardless of what the score is. On top of that, he's one of the youngest players in this draft class. So you have to imagine that as he continues to develop and get older and learn the ropes of more like strenuous schedules and more competitive leagues, he's going to keep getting better and better. So Dvorsky is where my head's at for the number 9 pick.
Yeah, he's also a good choice. Like I said, there's a lot. I don't know if we're going to be unhappy with what they do at 9 for sure. I'll stay with my same pick as that I had in the Grind Line article, and that is Oliver Moore. So I agree with you, Peter. I love Oliver Moore. I would wish he would drop down to where the Canucks are picking. That's not happening. I think his speed is just insane. What was their talk about him being compared to Connor McDavid type speed? And obviously that's high praise for a guy that's probably the fastest in the world. So, I mean, even if he's just close to that speed, that's insane to add to your prospect pool, to add to your team in the future. And he's not just fast, he's ridiculously skilled. He's probably, if he drops past the Red Wings, that's a steal for whoever gets him. He could even be drafted ahead of that. So we'll see. But I think Oliver Moore's my optimal pick at 9th overall. But I mean, there's so many other different guys, like everyone else that you guys have mentioned. They'll all be great picks as well. So, I mean, really, they can't go wrong. But there's a few guys we can talk about at 9.
I think the Canucks take on that. Like, that's my prediction. Moore goes to the Canucks 11.
If he drops to 11, the Canucks, if they don't, there's something obviously wrong.
You're a Red Wings fan from now on. That's
All right. Well, let's move down to 17 and talk about, again, lots of options at 17 as well. And it'll depend on what kind of happens before then, because a lot could happen. So Delaney, we'll start with you. 17th overall, draft target for the Red Wings that you want them to kind of get?
This one might be going a little high on the player for some people, but I just think he would be a good fit for the current Red Wings roster. Gavin Brindley.
Nice.
Yeah, I feel like not enough people are appreciating him enough because he 100% got overshadowed by Adam Fantilli all season. When you looked at Michigan hockey, you looked at the guys that were already drafted and you looked at Adam Fantilli because he pretty much guaranteed himself getting one of those first 3 draft picks pretty early on in the season. But Brindley's energetic, he excels defensively, versatile toolkit. You're telling me you would not love to see a guy like him on a line with someone like Dylan Larkin? That playmaking and the goals and the production that would come out of that line would be so much fun. I'm not saying that he has that's a guaranteed first liner. I'm not saying that by any means, but I'm saying I think there's the potential there for him to become someone that's that valuable that would be playing alongside Larkin in the big names on the Red Wings roster, whoever that may be at that point. But he's kind of short, but his IQ and skating really make up for that because he has solid skating and he has that good defensive zone coverage and everything that helps make up for him being more undersized. He's 5'9", if I remember correctly, but he had 12 goals and 26 assists with Michigan this season. And I think he would be a great pick at 17, even if that might be 5 picks higher than most people have him slotted at right now, but people have him as high as 9. So
yeah. Oh, you don't have to talk to me about Brindley. If you watch Prospect Corner, you know I love him. He's great. His work ethic's off the charts too, and he's one of those guys that, like I've said, he can play in the top 6. He'd probably play in the bottom 6. He can play all over the lineup. So I mean, it doesn't have to be in a top 6 role to be effective. So
exactly,
that's a valuable player in my opinion. Okay, Logan, who do you got? 17th overall draft target for the Red Wings.
I'm going to go with someone who is maybe not the most popular pick around this area, but genuinely, I don't know if he'll even be on the board when the draft comes to 17, and that's Samuel Honzek. There's a non-zero chance in my mind that the Red Wings take him 9th overall. I'm not kidding. 17th, though, would be great value in my eyes. I feel like his floor is what Michael Rasmussen is now, like a big, very large two-way winger, plays in your middle 6. That's the floor in my eyes. You see his skating, you see all the offense he has. I think if he didn't get hurt at the World Juniors and he played the full season, he was firmly in the top 10 in scoring in the WHL, neck and neck with guys like Andrew Crystal and Zach Benson, Riley Height, that kind of group scoring wise. And so if he had played a full healthy season, I think maybe he'd get a little bit more attention for that part of his game. But I've just been kind of watching him more and more lately, kind of realizing that he's kind of like Juraj Slavkovsky light, not just because he's Slovakian, but he's a big winger, power forward type game, skates really well, shoots really well, competes hard. I feel like they could get a real good top 6 winger who adds some size to the top 6, because we know a lot of the top guys that are currently in the Red Wings pool are not very big. Like Larkin would be the tallest unless Kubalik is in the top 6, which ideally a year or 2 from now, he's not. But none of the rest of the guys are very big. Honzek is, I think, 6'3.5". I think he measured at the combine. Really big, skates well, skates hard, scores goals. I'd be really happy with him at 17. 9 is a little early for my liking, but I could convince myself it's okay. But 17 would be great for Honzek in my eyes.
Yeah, it's tough. I don't know where he's going to go. I think he could, like you said, he could go before 17 if another team kind of thinks the same way you do. Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see where he goes. All right, let's finish this off. Devin, what do you think? 17th overall for the draft target there.
I'm going to start quickly with two guys that I think have a slim chance of being there at 17, but if they are there, they should definitely think about them. That would be Colby Barlow for all the reasons that Peter talked about for him being a candidate at 9th overall. If he's there at 17, he's a big old fit that fits real well for what the Red Wings need. I think that's real good value at 17. And then the other one is Tom Willander, right-handed defenseman. We've already talked about how they need that. They need a few of those, honestly, but Willander's probably up there with the best of them in terms of what this draft class has to offer. I like his potential as a future top 4 defenseman that can really complement a high octane guy. And he also is playing with in Rogla's system, and the Red Wings definitely have some trust in Rogla. Now the other guy I want to throw out that I feel like has a really good shot at being available at 17 is just a player that I've really kind of fallen in love with over the course of this draft season is winger Quentin Musty. Big body, right? 6'3", I think, as well. Plays kind of a power forward game, goes to the net, has some underrated skill, is able to translate that skill into production. I think that he's another player that just kind of checks some boxes. Big body, skill, could perform well with skilled players. And I think that he's kind of one of those players that really saw their stock increase over the course of this season. And I like a player that's on a good trajectory, and I think Quentin Musty is. So I think Barlow or Willander would be like slam dunk picks at 17. But if they're not there, I would have all the time in the world for Quentin Musty to be the pick.
Yeah, I don't know. Willander seems to be talked about in that upper top 10, top 12 now. So I don't know. It seems like if things kind of fall, the Canucks could draft him at 11. So I don't know. We'll see. We'll see where he goes. There's another defenseman. It's be interesting to see where he kind of places on draft day for sure. Okay, well, we talked about the first round. Let's get to their crazy 3 second-round picks, which we've talked many times about. Peter, what are your thoughts on those 3 second-round picks, if they make them all? That is, I mean, they could use them to trade. But what are some thoughts on those second-round picks, and throw out some targets?
Yeah, this is going to be in no specific order because I believe they're 41, 42, 43. But then again, 1 to 2 spots is not going to make or break, their decision making in the process that they take or whatever, right? It's reminiscent to the Bruins' top 3 picks in a row. Yeah. But knowing the Red Wings, they're going to make these count in the second round. They're going to come away with, some big name steals right there. First one I'm going to talk about is Anton Wahlberg. I'm big fan of his. 2-way, highly competitive, physical. Don't know what his scoring upside is going to be, but the upside that he does have, he makes up for because of his ability to drive hard to the net, get to the middle of the areas, use his body to his advantage. That's how he's going to get the points at the next level. I just want to see a little bit of consistency there, but he does have a lot of tools, and he was fantastic at the U18s. Obviously, that was a strong Swedish team. And I really fell in love with Wahlberg, even more so at that point. He was rising up my chart. That tournament solidified him as a, mid-tier second-round pick. The other 2 is going to be the right defense that we talked about before. Obviously, Tom Willander is a possibility at, with their 17th pick, but I really like Bo Akey. We talk about how the Red Wings have good, solid 2-way defensemen. Akey's more offensive minded. Obviously, defensive game is underrated and raw, but still a lot of work in progress because he has shown good gap control and aggressiveness to break up plays. But his transitional play is awesome. His ability to read in the offensive zone, pinches, utilize all of the ice, north, south, east, and west movements. He can walk the line very well. And great speed in transition. I really think that if they want to look at a high upside defenseman, he's going to be their pick. Someone in the lower tier of defensemen is another right shot, and that's Hunter Brustewitz. Obviously a bit more of a playmaker, doesn't shoot the puck more, but still steady, reliable, has more of a better defensive game than Akey. But it took a while for me to come around to Hunter throughout the season because you just notice his playmaking abilities. He doesn't shoot the puck a lot, but he's able to get a little bit greedy. I think if he develops a little bit of a shooter's mentality, but not, at the disadvantage of his playmaking, I think the Red Wings could come away with two very solid right-handed defensemen from this draft plus Wahlberg.
Yeah, those are really good targets for sure. All right, I'm sure there'll be some different ones because there's so many guys. Logan, get some thoughts on those 3 second-round picks in a row and some targets for us.
Yeah, for sure. I did an article, I think just this last week, on a whole bunch of guys they could take there, because while it seems unlikely they use all three, they definitely could. And that's early enough in the second round that I guarantee at that pick, there will be at least 3 guys that they have in their top 30, in their top 32 first round, whatever. That's just kind of how it goes. Teams have really small lists, usually, like a lot smaller than public scout people like us. But I wouldn't be shocked if they used them all and got some guys they like. So I'm gonna give 3 targets at the positions that I think they could probably use the most depth: center, right D, and goaltending. So for center, I'll say Oscar Fisker-Molgaard, who I think is a first rounder, but I've been seeing more and more him kind of sliding out. And if he's available there, he feels like a no doubt Red Wings type pick. Just really great defensively. Well, like, do you remember last year when Marco Kasper was a middle 6 center in the SHL and everyone's like, oh yeah, but he can't score. And then he could. That's exactly Oscar Fisker-Molgaard, except people might be right about the offense. He's got less than Kasper for sure, but he's been great defensively, and he's playing a pro game at 18 as a second line center on a decent SHL team this year. I like him a lot. Think he's a great middle 6 prospect, probably at center. Defense, I'll go Lucas Dragicevic, another guy that might not be there, might have risen out of that area a little bit, that range. Skating is rough. Some people aren't worried about it, but I am. But he's got excellent hands. He's got good size. I think he's 6'1", maybe close to 6'2". He's got good size, really good reach, good skill with the puck, tons and tons of offense. The thing is, he can't play defense mostly because of his skating. And if that's kind of a struggle in junior already, that makes me worried for the pro game. But that's really the only big flaw. So if they feel like that's something that can be developed, then he could be a really big swing on upside. And then goaltending. No one has a single clue what's going to happen with goalies in this year's draft, because who knows? Are they going to start going in the 20s? Are they going to start going in the 50s? Like, nobody knows. If Michael Hrabal is still on the board, he feels like kind of like he has an analogous game to Sebastian Cossa, some major similarities in size, athleticism, and then issues with hockey sense and tracking the puck and play and stuff. But could be a fun pick. He's like almost 6'7", so he's massive, like Cossa. But then my preference would be Trey Augustine from, he's not my favorite goaltending prospect this year, to be clear. Hrabal I like more. But I think he'd be a really great foil to Sebastian Cossa. He's almost the opposite. He's 6'1" instead of, what is Cossa, 6'5", 6'6"?
6'6",
He's 6'1". Isn't the most explosive athlete, maybe not the most like fiery competitive guy, which Cossa is, but he's without a doubt the smartest goalie in this class, tracks the play and the puck really, really, really well. And it'd be kind of fun to just have that balance. And I think he's got a real shot to be an NHL goalie someday. So those are my targets in the second.
Again, that's another 3 great targets for the Red Wings at those second round picks. So it's going to be fun to see what happens with those, because like you said, they could pick them all, they could trade one of them and get something, but either way, it's going to be fun to see what happens. Okay, well, we've talked about all the targets and all that strategy and all that. Is it fair to say this is the most important draft of Yzerman's tenure as Red Wings GM? This is a deep draft. They've got, like I say, 2 first rounders, 3 second rounders, and of course, where he thrives in the late rounds, could get some guys there. So we'll start with you. We'll go back to you, Logan. Do you think it's the most important draft of his tenure here?
I do, but also if you ask me that on literally any year, I'll say yes. Just because it's always the next one. The next one is the most important one.
Yeah.
This is the one coming up. But to give more detail, like 2 top 17 picks in a really good draft could be 2 like serious game changers for the team. Possibly likely top 4 defensemen or top 6 forward, which are huge positions to fill. So I think it's a yes for me.
All right, Peter, do you think this is his most important so far?
Most important, yes. Will he come out a winner? Absolutely, because of how well the Detroit Red Wings draft. I mean, like Logan said, you have 2 picks in the top 20, 1 in the top 10, and then the 3 in the second round, all before the top 50. So you can make do of those 5 picks very, very well for it. If you're Steve Yzerman, you're going to succeed. And no matter what draft it's going to be in, it's going to be important, and he's going to come out on top no matter what.
All right. That's for sure. Delaney, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm gonna keep hitting the yes button on this one, but especially to Red Wings fans, this is a really important one because I know a good number of people are starting to lose some patience with like how the Yzer plan is progressing and things like that, and they want to see big differences being made. So this could be a make it or break it for some fans specifically, but also every draft is the most important draft for a GM's career because you never know when you're going to draft the guy that changes your franchise forever or something like that. So I'd say, it's equally as important as the rest, but also keeps him out of the hot seat with some keyboard warriors on Twitter if he makes some better picks this year.
For sure. All right, Devin, what do you think?
Well, first off, Logan's comment about it being like every year's most important draft reminds me of political commentators when they always talk about how this is the most important election of our lifetime. Anyways, I do think it is the most important. And the reason why is because I think that with where the Red Wings are at in their rebuild, with where they are in the Atlantic Division, just the overall look of the league in general, this is where Yzerman's got to really kind of earn his reputation that he showed up in Detroit with after his time in Tampa Bay. Two picks in the top 20, you better get some difference makers out of that. You better get players that are going to play some prime minutes and be key contributors. Those 3 second-round picks, I don't know if he's going to make all of them, but you better get something good out of them, right? If you come out of this draft and it's like a lot of projects and maybe some ifs and maybes, you're going to start wondering what this Yzer plan actually is. So I think, this is most important. This is where Yzerman's really got to show his stuff.
All right, Tony, finish it off with you. What do you think?
Fine, I'll go against the grain. No, it's not the most important draft of Yzerman's tenure. That was the 2020 draft when they drafted Lucas Raymond at number 4. To that point, number 4, and actually since then as well, is the highest the Red Wings have drafted during their rebuild. And when you're drafting that high, yes, number 1 would have been preferred since they were the last place team, during that season. When you're drafting at number 4, you need to make sure you get it right because that player is probably one of the best players you're going to draft in the entire rebuild. And frankly, they got it right. Lucas Raymond has been one of the best players from that draft class. I think only Tim Stützle from Ottawa has been better from a points perspective. Raymond's been better than Alexis Lafreniere and Quinton Byfield as well. Those 2 were selected ahead of him. But I remember during the lead up to that draft, there was a lot of talk about Cole Perfetti possibly going to the Red Wings as like the optimal Yzerman pick, which I disagreed with completely. Marco Rossi was up there and his circumstances different, which, you can't fault him for that. Jamie Drysdale as well, even though he was a right D and Sider was drafted the year before. Red Wings got it right. And that was, frankly, that in my opinion, that was the most important draft. This year is up there as, of course, but if we're looking at Yzerman's whole tenure, the 2020 draft was, in my opinion, the most important.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think that one is, we'll see how this one goes. I think it's the hindsight is what you kind of can see more once this draft is done, see how all these guys pan or start panning out. But yeah, I agree. I think this is probably his most important, but it'll depend on how everything kind of falls. But yeah, I do. That's a good point with that Raymond draft for sure. I do agree with that. So I'll say it is, but with the caveat that with Tony's one, that's pretty good. Okay, I'm going to go off the board quickly to finish up the show because we got our prospect corner panel here. Logan, give us a late round gem that you think the Red Wings could walk away from this draft with.
Well, that's a great question. Someone to keep an eye on is Hoyt Stanley. He played in the BCHL, the Junior A Hockey League in Canada. He's a right shot D. He's 6'2", skates pretty well, has good offense, kind of struggles on defense, isn't as physical as you'd like for someone his size, but he has grown a lot recently. So maybe he's just kind of taken some time to catch up there, but he should be available for their pick in the 3rd round. But maybe a little later even. I don't think they have their 4th. I think that one went to Vancouver. So you might need to take him with your 3rd round pick if you want him, but could be a fun upside option. He's taking the Junior A to NCAA route rather than the WHL, even though he was drafted. Can't remember which team. He was drafted to the WHL recently, but decided against it for a better development path. So Hoyt Stanley is someone to keep an eye on in some of the mid rounds.
All right, there's a good pick. Peter, what do you think? Late round gem that Yzerman could walk away with here?
I'm gonna say Juraj Pekarsik, and we talked about him on prospect corner. We're talking about the left side here. He's more of a playmaker, but he has a lot of great puck skills, great IQ, great awareness in the offensive zone, great patience with the puck. He's someone that I think can, if they draft higher upside guys or guys that could, put the puck in the net very well, like Colby Barlow or what have you, if Pekarsik is going to be that middle 6 option or a player that could be in, the second line wing, he can feed them the puck and he's got great awareness to open space up. So I think he's one name to keep an eye on if you're the Red Wings.
All right, Tony, you said in the chat here, you got one. So what do you got?
All right. So during my research on this draft, one player who I guarantee will be a Red Wing by the end of this is Colson Pietra from the Flint Firebirds. He played with Amadeus Lombardi from time to time during the season. He fits the description of the kind of the players that the Red Wings draft, the high motor, the high hockey IQ, the speed. Most have him ranked in the 3rd round range, right where the Red Wings are going to pick around number 73. I would not be surprised if he was their last 2nd round pick. I just think he is a Red Wings pick through and through.
Yeah, that's a good one too. Delaney, Devin, you got one you want to throw out here?
I can add another.
All right, well, there's a lot. I mean, I think Yzerman's going to pick one. He seems to be able to hit on some of these late round guys, and we've already seen a few of them in the system already. So I'm anticipating him to pick one that it's going to be interesting to see what happens in the later rounds, not just that top of the draft. So yeah, there you go. So we're done. That was we're around pretty big episode, jam-packed, full of a lot of stuff. We talked about prospects. We talked about the future prospects of the draft here. So thanks everyone for coming on the show. Devin, Delaney, Peter, Logan, Tony, thanks for coming on. And you'll see a few of us back next episode. But it's always a fun panel to get together every year. So thanks for coming together again and bringing all your knowledge and stuff about prospects to the table. Okay, well, the draft is a few days away. So depending on when you watch this, it could be tomorrow. It could be whenever you're watching this. Keep your eye out on the hockeywriters.com. We'll have coverage on all the Red Wings draft picks. Probably a few more articles just before the draft as well. Still got a few days here. And then obviously recaps and talking about the prospects the Red Wings do pick, because they're going to have at least a few, depending on, they could have 5 top picks to talk about, or who knows, we'll see. But draft is coming up. So keep it locked on the hockeywriters.com YouTube channel. We'll have an episode directly after the draft because it pretty much happens when we record. So we'll have some pretty instant reaction to the draft coming up in the next episode. So stay tuned for that. Keep the comments coming. We didn't have a comment corner this episode, but I'm sure we'll have plenty of comments to come with the draft just around the corner. So until next time, we'll see you on another episode of the Grind Line.